You remember that nerdy kid, the one in middle school who spent a lot of time on the internet and dressed up in weird costumes? And sure, all that time on the internet and computers netted me a good job, but it wasn't my passion. That passion? Photography. And it turns out that photography was something that was already in my blood. So if you like cameras, film, chemistry, history, adventure, and a little bit of exploration, then I think we're going to get along just fine. Hey there friends, welcome back to the channel. My name's Alex Laux and today I have a developer review for you today. Yes, a developer made right here in Canada by the company called Flic Film. This was actually one of their first developers that they released into the market, and it caught my attention during the pandemic. And that developer is called Black, White, and Green. And they pitched it as a environmentally safe developer specifically for people who are on septic systems. So I'm going to kick you back to the studio. We can talk a little bit about where this developer come from, what it actually is, and how you can even make it yourself. And I'll see you right back here in a moment. So when I first reviewed Flic Film's Black, White, and Green in 2022, I mentioned that it was a brand new developer. Well, that was kind of true, kind of not. It was in fact my good friend James Lane who pointed out that the formula for Black, White, and Green is the exact same as Pat Gaynor's developer known as PCT. And that is in fact true. And what makes PCT so special is that it exploits the preservative nature and activating nature of tea, which is a form of propylene glycol. And there's another name for it, and I cannot pronounce it, so you're going to see it up on the screen now. What's really nice about propylene glycol is that it has a long shelf life because of its ability to resist oxidization. There are also two primary developing agents within PCT, and that is phenidone A and ascorbic acid. You'll probably recognize these two developers because they're used in Rohypnol, 5,10-pyro, and Kodak Xtol. And then it also has in addition to it potassium bromide, which is an anti-fogging agent. If you have the ability, skill, time, and equipment, you can actually make PCT yourself. You're going to start off with 100 milliliters of tea, 9 grams of ascorbic acid, 0.25 grams of phenidone A, and 0.2 grams of potassium bromide. To start off with, you're going to want to heat the tea to a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius, and then you're going to add in the ascorbic acid and the potassium bromide. You're going to stir this into solution, continuing to stir until the powdered elements, that is the ascorbic acid and the potassium bromide, are completely dissolved. This apparently can take a significant amount of time. Once this is completely dissolved, the temperature will have dropped to approximately 65 degrees Celsius. That's when you add in the phenidone and continue to stir until it is completely dissolved. One of the interesting things about this is that it has no water in the creation of your concentrate. And that's because the propylene glycol, the tea, is what you're dissolving the actual base chemicals in, and it's also what gives it its long life, and it makes it relatively safe to dispose of down rural septic systems because it is not an aqueous solution. The one thing that is definitely going to help out with creating this at home is using a magnetic stir that has a heating element in it. Now, these are a lot more expensive than your just straight up magnetic stirrers that simply act as an ability to stir it, but it will definitely make your life a little bit easier. And if you do a lot of work with tea as your base chemical, it might be a worthwhile investment. All right, so I am here at Gairloch Gardens in Oakville, Ontario, Canada, and I have my trusty Rolleiflex 2.8F loaded with some Kentmere 400. I have a yellow filter on here, and I'm going to be shooting it at the full box speed of ASA 400. So let's take a quick walk. I'll shoot a quick 12 and talk to you a little bit about the applications for black, white, and green. Black, white, and green is the safer option for those who live in rural areas and rely on a septic tank for their home sewage. While still toxic, black, white, and green does not cause damage to your septic system and has a lower environmental impact, unlike traditional film developers. It also works well for those who don't do a lot of developing and have long periods of time between sessions, thanks to its long shelf life. Black, white, and green also offers up an excellent balance between taming visible grain while maintaining sharpness, similar to 510 Pyro, but does not impart that same stain on your negatives. You can also use it for limited push-pull applications, but I found that it handles pulling film better than pushing, and then you're really only going within a stop in either direction. And as for film stocks, it doesn't really matter. Fast or slow, traditional or modern grain structures, it handles anything you soup in the stuff. Okay, so that covers it for all 12 frames. Let's head back home and we can get these into the tank, and I can tell you a little bit about developing and some of the additional qualities about black, white, and green. And I'll see you back here when everything's done. The one thing that you'll notice with black, white, and green is that the concentrate is a thick liquid. If you're used to working with the original HC110 formula or 510 Pyro, you're going to be a pro at working with the stuff. The one thing I did notice is that it is slightly easier to pour than 510 Pyro, so you can get away with not using a syringe, but it does help. Personally, I use the same method as Ilfotech HC, pouring the concentrate into my smallest graduating cylinder, pouring the majority out into my mixing container, and then using a couple of flushes of water to get the last bits out. Then make sure it's completely mixed in with water before using the solution. The nice thing is that you're only working with a single dilution, 1:49 for all times, so the bottle does last a while, and in fact I'm still working with my original bottle from 2022. Thankfully, Flic Film has provided a long list of developing times, so you'll be able to find most black and white films listed on their website, and many are being pushed through to the massive dev chart. The one thing to note is that all the development times are rather long. Most are over 10 minutes. Thankfully, you can use constant rotation to cut down these times without any impact to grain or contrast. While there's no documentation on how to stop the process, the slow action, long developing times, and dilute mix means you can probably get away with stopping using straight water. But I still use an acid stop bath. Then just use a regular rapid fixer and you're good to wash the film and hang it up to dry. Black, white, and green works like combining Rohypnol and Xtol. You're going to get sharp results without it being overly grainy at the same time. Contrast-wise, it's pretty neutral, doing little to adjust any inherent contrast in the film stock, especially when shot at box speed. When you're going to push and pull using black, white, and green, you're going to have a middling effect on that contrast. It's going to smooth things over, help bring out those midtones and that middle gray, which helps with the overall sharpness of your film because you're going to have that excellent tonal separation. When it comes to grain, it certainly helps reduce overly grainy film stocks. Not completely, mind you, but neither did Xtol. I saw grain reduction with Fomapan 400, Tri-X, and even Kentmere 400. If you have a fine grain sharp film, you're going to get really sharp results with, again, a slight reduction in grain, but not much. You're going to lose no edge sharpness here, but you're going to tame some of the worst aspects of visible grain, and overall get high quality, excellent images when developing with black, white, and green. Alright, so that wraps it up for this video. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever used either PCT or black, white, and green and what your thoughts on it are. And bonus points if you've actually mixed it up yourself from scratch. Let me know how that goes because it seems like a pretty complex thing to mix up, especially with that heating up the tea. And as always, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification icon. And at the very least, give me a thumbs up. And throughout 2025, I've been collecting questions about myself, my life, my photography. So if you have a burning question you want me to answer at the end of the year, leave that in the comments below using the hashtag AskALP, and I'll make sure that if possible, I'll get you the answer to that question. And as I always like to say, shoot what you love with what you love on what you love. Don't give in to the hate.